Hi everyone, and welcome to another review from Class 47 Peter. And in today's review we're going to be having a look at a model made by Heljan, which is going to be a nice change because I don't tend to look at many models made by Heljan, and it has been a while since I last looked at a Heljan model. But this one is special because this is a steam loco, and this is the first Heljan steam locomotive that I have ever bought or owned. But they've not long started making steam locos. They first brought out the Garrett, then it was the Gresley 02 Tango, and then we have this, which is the Heljan 1366 Pannier tank, which came out at the end of last year in December. I can't remember which week it was. I think it was either before or after Christmas, but it has been out for a while now. Now, I bought this model at the end of January, and this model is in the GWR green livery. There are several versions. There's 3 GWR green liveries and 2 BR black ones. There's BR black early emblem, BR black with a light crest, and for the GWR liveries there's the Sherputton logo. There's the one that has the full Great Western text on the sides of the tanks, which is a model of the preserved one, 1369, and then there's this one, which is the monogram livery. Well, I say that because I've seen other sources refer to this livery as the monogram, which basically this is the one that has the letters GWR written on the sides. This is the one I wanted, and if I was going to get one of these models, it was always going to be a GWR green one. And I've been looking forward to this model since it was first announced. I can't remember when it was first announced exactly, but it was going back a few years ago. And then when I saw these on display at Worley last year on the Heljan stand, it made me even more excited for them. Right, so let's not waste any time and get straight into the unboxing. So first of all, we're going to take off the box sleeve. This is Heljan's typical standard packaging now, the plastic packaging that I'm not a fan of, but there we go. But then again, I was never keen on the foam packaging either that they brought out before this one. That's just me. So, taking the sleeve to one side, we now take out the plastic tray. And then we remove the instructions from the card tray, and we'll have a look at the instructions first. So here are the instructions, as I've said, for the GWR/BR 1366 Pannier. On the front it just tells you about the model, and then on the back we have an exploded diagram of the model and all the various parts to the model. So if you lose a part, you can send away for them if you need to. Then inside the instructions you get the specification and the history of the locomotive, the real one of course. Then it talks to you about removing the body shell to fit a DCC chip, and it also talks about the parts that you get supplied with the model, which we will come on to in a minute. And you also get a couple of photographs there showing you how to remove the body. You have a few arrows pointing to the screws that you can just about make out there. So that's the instructions, so we'll fold them back up and we'll put them to one side, and I'll stick them in my folder with all the other instructions I have later on. And then we're going to slide off the plastic casing of the packaging. As you can see, the model is nice and snug in there. So once we've slid off the outer casing of the packaging, we can now get to the detail parts, which are in 2 separate bags. So in these bags of details we get a spare boiler balance pipe. We get this curious piece of green plastic that I have no idea what it is or what it's for. We get 4 nice GWR styled headlamps. We also get a nice little bell, which you can add if you want to. In reality, these locos did have bells, but this was only for when they were in service on the Weymouth tramway, which I have been to. I went to Weymouth in 2015. And I did see the tramway there, which is no longer in use, but the 1366s did operate there, and they had these bells. And the real preserved 1366 does have a bell, So you can add it if you want to. However, in the rectangular bracket that the bell fits into, it does recommend in the instructions that you drill a hole into it to glue it into place, because they say it's necessary. But this is only optional, you don't have to add it, but I shall do it because it's a nice little bit of detail to have, and it's somewhat different as well. Of course, we also have two NEM couplings. We also get some fire irons. Now, these look all wobbly and bent. Now, I don't think they should be like that, because they should be nice and straight. So, the plastic they've used, I think, is not ideal for this, because the plastic is a bit soft, and I did try to bend them back into shape, but they just wouldn't go. So, the fact that they are wobbly and bent, it does ruin them a bit, but I do have some other fire irons in my spares box, so I can just add those onto the model myself. So, all is not lost. And last but not least, we get a couple of small shovels as well. So the detail part's now covered. You now just undo the clip to the packaging, and we lift the model out of the tray, and we can now have a look at the model in detail. Now, normally at this point I would first of all go on to talk about the weight of the model, but before I do that, I want to talk about a little alteration I have done to the model. And I'm sure the eagle-eyed among you will notice it already. And the alteration I've done to the model, that is, it concerns the outside moving parts. That is the side rods and the valve gear. What I have done to these parts exactly is that when you first get the Heljan 1366, the valve gear and the side rods are painted black. I'm not too sure why they're painted black, but they just are. So what I did was, I took a small flat bladed screwdriver and some paintbrush cleaner, because you can use it to remove paint as well, and I just simply rubbed over it on the side rods and it removed the paint off them. So the outside motion now does look a lot better. I mean, you do get some parts, say like some of the side rods made out of silver and other parts are made out of gold, but you know, I like that because it adds a nice bit of bling to it, and it looks better than painted black. I'm not too sure why they came black. Maybe Heljan's intention was to give them a weathered look on the outside motion parts or something, but they shouldn't be black, and they do look much better now than it did when they came with the model. So that's a nice little improvement. You don't have to do it, but I've done it because I think it looks better, in my opinion. Now we can talk about the weight, and there is a lot of weight in this model, giving it's only a small locomotive, so Heljan have realised that because it's a small locomotive it needs plenty of weight in it. And that's because the running plate and the running board are made of metal, which adds a nice bit of weight, and of course you've got the mechanism itself that adds a bit of weight to the model anyway. And I think they might have impacted some weight into the model as well. So it's got more than enough weight to pull a train, which is what it needs. Because if it's lightweight, then it won't be able to pull anything, which is why the weight is important. Now we move on to the detail. So first of all we have sprung buffers that are loosely sprung, and they are made of plastic. So if you like your sprung buffers, then it will keep you quiet and it will make you happy. But I don't really have much care for the sprung buffers, but they're there anyway. Moving on to the buffer beam, and it's packed with detail. We've got loads of rivets on the buffer beam, as you can see. We've also got the loco's running number, 1370, crisply printed on the front there, which looks nice. And I just love how the 0 has the rivets on it, and that's just a really nice touch. We also have the typical styled GWR brake pipe on the front there, and we have a chain link coupling and another vacuum pipe there on the front, which is a great bit of detail to have. We also have some guard irons under the buffer beam, as you can see there, and you can just about make out an end pocket as well to fit the coupling into, but I will not be adding it on the front. I'll only be adding it on the rear of the model in this case. Then we move on to the cylinders. So first of all we'll start with the drain cocks. They're not painted, but you could paint them yourself if you wanted to, so it's not too much of a problem. But at least they're there, and you don't have to glue them on yourself, which is nice that Heljan have already put them on for you. And the cylinders themselves, there are a couple of rivets on there. They are a bit hard to see, but you can just about make them out. Moving on to the running board now, in which we have some separately fitted lamp irons on the front. We also have these bits of detail under the smoke box door, which they act as steps so the crew can climb up onto the top of the loco. And they're a nice bit of detail to have. Then we come onto the smoke box door, which we do have some separately fitted smoke box door darts, and we have loads of rivets running around the outside of the smoke box door. We also have a lamp iron fitted on top of the smoke box door, as it is with the loco in reality, so it's nice to see that on the model. We also have some separately fitted small metal handrails on top of the locomotive tanks there, as you can see, one on each end on the sides there, which is nice to have, and on the real 1366 those handrails are present. We also have a separately fitted handrail running down the sides of the tanks, runs to the front of the locomotive and bends up over the top of the smoke box door and runs down to the other side of the tanks. And that is a great feature to have, and it makes the model look more realistic. We move on to the chimney now, which the chimney is very nice. You could add a smoke generator unit in it if you wanted, but this is not my thing, so I shall not be bothering, but you can do it if you want to. We might as well talk about the outside moving parts again. It's all done superbly and accurately, and just wait when you see all that moving, that's just going to look fantastic. And the wheels are quite nice as well. It's not often I talk about the wheels themselves in reviews like this, but there is some nice detail on the wheels. I don't know what these parts of the wheels are called, but the part I'm talking about in question does have some rivet detail on them, which is very nice, and again, the rivets make the model look all the more realistic. We also have a footstep there under the cab and some pipe work running behind the footstep and under the running plate, and there's also some rivet detail on the footstep as well. They've even added some brake blocks in front of the drive wheels as well, which is a great bit of detail to have, because again, it makes the model more realistic. We've also got some sanding gear as well, as you can see here, just on the rear drive wheels. We have a couple of handrails there, just by the smoke box, as you can see, and in front of those lamp irons you have the outer steam pipes. And there's also some rivet detail as well on the smoke box, as you can just about see. We have a nice little sandbox there on the running board, and also on the running board there's some more rivet detail. We also get a little toolbox, and that is the rectangular bracket at the side of it that I was talking about that the bell goes on, which they recommend to drill a hole in there, because they say it's necessary to glue the bell in, but I'm sure you could glue the bell in without drilling a hole in. And at the side of that bracket there's some nice pipe work there as well. We've also got some visible daylights under the boiler there, as you can see. There's also a couple of springs, and as you can see there's the boiler balance pipe that's already fitted. Like I said earlier, the one in the detail bag, it's a spare. Moving on to the cab now, which there are loads of rivets on the cab, just as we like it to be, because there are loads of rivets on the cab and the real loco. And the rivets, again, as I keep saying, they make the model all the more realistic and more detailed as well. We've got a couple of nice separately fitted metal handrails down the sides of the door there. There's also a separately fitted metal handrail on the bunker there, as you can see. And we've also got the GWR style number plates there on the sides of the cab, with the locomotive's running number 1370. And what I do like about these is that they are, it's done in a way that they're sort of moulded onto the sides, but it sticks out a bit, so it kind of makes it look like they're not moulded, if you know what I'm saying. But you know what I mean, and it's a great bit of detail to have. You could, if you wanted to, use some etched number plates, but I'm not going to do that because I like these ones on the model, which are just as good. And as ever, there is some detail inside the cab. You get gauges, dials, the regulator, the lever, it's all there. Bearing in mind, however, none of it is painted in this case, but you could, if you wanted to, as you can take the body off, you could paint the cab interior inside the cab. But you don't have to do that, but I'm not going to do it, but at least the detail's there, and it's still nice, even if it's not painted. Moving on to the roof detail, which there are some rivets on the roof and a cab roof vent that does not open, but it doesn't need to anyway. But it's there. There's glazing in the cab windows, as we'd expect them to be, and on the front of the cab, again, there's more rivets. We also have a whistle guard and some separately fitted whistles, which I think these are made of turned brass. They normally are. And we also have the typical GWR styled safety valve as well, in front of the whistles. We've also got a nice dome, and either side of the dome there are also a couple of washout plugs as well. We've also got a couple of water filler caps as well. They do not open, but in all fairness we shouldn't expect them to, and they don't need to open anyway. At least they're there on the model, like they should be. So they're nice to have. The top of the tanks though are not devoid of some moulded detail though. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of it looks nice, but it would have also been nice if some of that detail had been separately fitted. But it's not too much of a major problem. I mean, there is some detail there, it's just that it would have been nice if some of it was separately fitted and some of it was moulded, so you had a bit more variety there. But hey, at least there are some separately fitted details already on top of the tank, so not too much of an issue there. Moving on to the rear of the bunker now, and again there are loads of rivets on the bunker, just as there should be. There is some glazing in the rear cab windows, just like there was in the front, and you've also got some guard irons there on the rear windows. We also have a couple of separately fitted handrails there on the bunker. We get a brake pipe on the back of the Loco, and on the bunker you have what I like to call fire iron storage hooks, because on those hooks they do, in reality, use them for putting fire irons on, such as like a shovel or a few poking irons, and they even put a bucket on as well. And that's something I shall be putting on the model, because I think it's a great bit of detail to have. And we can't leave out the lamp irons on the bunker either, on the rear of the Loco, which look very nice. Again, just like the front buffer beam, there are loads of rivets on the buffer beam. We have another chain link coupling and another vacuum pipe, and you can see another NEM socket there. And again, just like on the front, we've got the locomotive's running number printed on the buffer beam. And again, just like on the front, we have loose sprung plastic buffers. Now we move on to the coal load, which it is indeed removable. So I'll just use a little needle to prise it off. But the way they've done the removable coal on this model is something different that I've never seen any other manufacturer do. Because the coal load itself in the bunker is actually attached using double-sided adhesive tape. Now that is actually a very clever thing to do. That is a very good idea, that is. So what Heljan have done here is that they've thought outside the box, and that is really good, that is. It's nice to see manufacturers do something different. You can add removable coal, as you can see, which I shall be doing later on. But you can also scatter it on top of the coal load itself already, but I think what I'm going to be doing is to remove the coal load and just add my real coal load on the bunker. But it's up to you how you do it. Moving on to the livery, which we cannot leave out of this review. The livery application, it's very smooth and very even. There's no errors in the paint, which is what we don't want to see. The livery itself, the shade of green, it is a different shade of green, but it doesn't matter to me, because I like the green as it is on the model. It's nice to see different shades of green. I know it's different from other models I have seen, but I like this shade of green. There's nothing wrong with it, in my opinion. And it's a very nice shade of green as well. And it's a little bit of variety. It may not be the most accurate shade of green, but I like it nonetheless. And we have the beautifully printed GWR lettering on the sides of the tanks there. Moving on to the other side of the model, now there is some detail differences. Not much, but there is some. First of all, on this side of the model, we have a reversing lever. On this side of the model, where the moving parts are, we get this detail, which is right by the motion brackets. I have no idea what this part is. Possibly some sort of lubricator thing, I've got no idea, but it's there, and it's there as it is on the real locomotive. One thing I should talk about, and this is something you get on both sides of the model, on the running plate, is the letters SDN printed. Now I have no idea what this stands for, what this means, so if you know, comments below, but it's there and it's crisply printed and it looks nice on the model. It's something a bit different that I've not seen printed on GWR models before. All the detail covered, now we come on to the running of the model, which it ran very smoothly around the layout, as you can see. There was no grinding noises, stuttering movement or motors burning out, which is not what we should be encountering. It should be running nice and smooth, as you can see here. Just look at all those moving parts moving on the model. It really is a pleasure to see all that moving on the model, just like as you do on the real thing. We now move on to the loaded test run, which the model is seen pulling the rake of suburban coaches around the layout. I know it's not a very long train, but it still shows why the weight is important with these models. So overall then, for the money, I think the Heljan 1366 is definitely worth it. You've got the smooth running, the stunning detail that it has. It's a great model, and I think every layout needs to get one of these, because if not, you'll miss out. Definitely was worth looking forward to. So overall, I'm going to rate the Heljan 1366 a 9 out of 10. Despite what I've said, there are a couple of things that could be changed and they're not perfect, but for the rest of the detail, it's very strong, and it's so strong in fact it outweighs the little things that could be changed. But anyway, this has been Class 47 Peter, reviewing the Heljan 1366 Pannier, and I'll see you again soon, for which we'll be reviewing the Heljan 1361. But until then, take care, hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again soon.